Hi everyone, this is May and welcome again to my channel Fanitation. Today's review will be about Nueng Nai Suang, or Only You in My Heart or One in My Heart, starring James Jirayu and Yaya, Urassayas. This drama was first broadcast in 2015. There are 12 episodes in total and it is a 1950s period drama. So the story is about a girl named Hatairat or Pum, played by Yaya. She is an orphan and she is brought up by the Neung Diao family, growing up as sort of one of their own children. Now the male lead, played by James, is Anawat or Neung, who is a very rich guy and a diplomat. So they meet as adults and Pum remembers that Anawat used to be very mean to her when they were children. Neung doesn't remember Pum at all from their childhood and he can't understand why she spurns him when he shows some interest in her. So he's very embarrassed and wants to get back at her. But of course, he is slowly falling in love with her. So they bicker a lot and there's a lot of misunderstandings. But of course, at the end, they find their happy ending. So Nueng Nai Suang is not a surprising show. It is full of cliches. It's got the rich man, poor girl, enemies to lovers. There's also this love triangle or pentagon or hexagon. I mean, there are so many parties involved. I don't know what shape they can fit into. There are multiple men in love with the female lead and there are multiple females or females' moms who are trying to hook Neung. The female lead has a best friend who is in love with a man who is in love with the female lead. Of course, that's the jealous second female lead who is very materialistic, has a crazy ass mom, but the male lead is absolutely not interested in her. So this is not a surprising storyline by any means. So on my scale of 1 to 10 of James dramas that I like to watch, Nueng Nai Suang ranks as 8 out of 10, which might surprise some of you because I know that this story is quite popular among James fans who really liked him as Neung and really liked his pairing with Yaya. So what were some of the things that I really liked about Nueng Nai Suang? I think the first thing is the styling and costumes is really pretty. I mean, a visual feast. Gives you kind of a holiday feel. So the good female characters like Pum and Ben and Pani all wear, you know, lovely 1950s dresses, floral, light colors, very young and very pretty. The females who are maybe not so good also wear very bright colors, but they tend to be of a much deeper shade. So for example, Song Sang wears a lot of very rich jewel-like colors, making her look maybe more sophisticated, a little bit more materialistic, maybe not so innocent. The men wear, you know, waistcoats and suits, and I particularly love their sportswear, their tennis outfits and the swimsuits that the girls wear when they go to the seaside. I mean, this is all very, very charming. I also liked the way they portrayed and contrasted the family relationships. So the main family, Pum's family, the one that she grows up with, the Neung Diao, they are sort of like the model functional family, very loving and supportive of each other. And the brother and sister that Pum grows up with, Poo and Ben, they are really lovely. Many of the characters in this show have a name starting with the letter P and it is really confusing me and I'm having some difficulty getting the words out correctly, so please excuse me. So Poo is played by Fair Gandon and he is really very charming, very handsome, and I vaguely remember there was some rumor that he sort of dropped out of acting after a while, which I think was a pity because I thought he did very well in this show. I really liked his character and he has a very good sibling relationship with Pum and with his blood sister Ben. Ben is played by Michelle Berman, really lovely, supportive sister figure to Pum. And unfortunately, she is in love with a man who is besotted with Pum, but Pum is not interested in him. On the flip side, you have the contrasting families where they're very dysfunctional. I think the worst family in this show is Pinit and Penny's family. So Pinit is played by Om Kanin. He is one of Neung's friends and he is in love with Pum, almost to the point of obsession. even though she has no feelings for him. He's quite sickly, and I think because of his unrequited love from Boom, I think that also mentally wears him down. Now, Pinit's sister Penny is played by Ploy Patragon, whom I really liked in this role as well. They have a very good brother-sister relationship, but because Pinit is so weak physically and weak mentally, he is unable to provide her the support that she really needs because they have a terrible witch of a mother. She's extremely devious, she's very materialistic, and she wants Penny to marry Neung because he's very rich. And she does all sorts of terrible things to discredit Boom, whom she feels is like a lowly orphan girl who is trying to climb above her status. So surprisingly, even though Pinit and Penny have such a terrible mother, they are both actually pretty good characters, and Penny in particular has very strong values, very well brought up in spite of her mother. The other dysfunctional family in this show is actually Song San and her mother. So Song San is played by Noi Chotika, who also played Marati Tewaprom in Kunchai Putipat. And unfortunately, I find her character here so similar to Marati, you could sort of superimpose her in both dramas and it wouldn't really make a difference. Even the styling is almost the same. She wears, very fitted clothes, bright jewel colors, very tight, strappy dresses that I suppose decent women in those days didn't wear. And of course, those hats that I really dislike, which I mentioned in my video on Kunchai Putipat. Song San's aim in life is to marry a rich man. So Neung is her first target, and her mother enables her in all sorts of ways, but her mother at least has a little bit of a conscience and is nowhere near as bad as Pinit and Penny's mother. So before I come to the main couple played by James and Yaya, let me mention two other couples in this show. I really loved the pairing of Pooh and Penny, and I felt so sad for them when all these horrible people tried to drive them apart, because it was so obvious from the start that they were meant for each other. Very well suited pair in terms of temperament and how much they love each other and the kind of support they give to each other. So I was so happy when they ended up together, because this is one couple that deserved to be together. Now, the other couple was Ben and Kunchai Prasapon. So Kunchai Prasapon is another of these characters, head over heels in love with Yaya's character, even though she is not interested in him. And in a kind of a Cyrano de Bergerac type of arrangement, he writes to Ben when he is overseas to find out, how Boom is doing, but Ben is actually in love with him. So in the end, he realizes that he loves Ben, and of course he is redeemed by the fact that he helps the Boom and Neung romance to solidify. But somehow I feel that Ben should have made him suffer a little bit more, and that maybe he didn't really deserve her. I also wanted to make a quick mention of the young actress Grace Panrada, who played Kun Ying, the little girl who was handicapped and had to be in a wheelchair. She was really sweet, and she played her very well. Again, as I mentioned in my video on Payakon Sonrak, I'm a bit wary of young actors and actresses who are too cutesy, but she's not. She's really lovely, and she plays a very central role in how Boom and Neung actually see a slightly different side of each other through her eyes. So what were my biggest issues with Nueng Nai Suang? I think the first one has to do with the chemistry between James and Yaya. So I went through the photo albums from the official Nueng Nai Suang Facebook page. Now in the pictures, you can see that James and Yaya and the rest of the cast seemed to get along very well, and there was very nice chemistry between James and Yaya. He is very tall and good looking, she's very tall and she's very pretty, and they look very good together. But beyond looking handsome and pretty, they really looked like they had fun and they had chemistry in photographs. But I found that in the show, this didn't come through as much. So some young actresses have what I call the pretty affliction. They can be a bit stiff and their faces don't have that much expression because they're very concerned about how they look on camera. And I felt that this was the case in this show. So I felt that Boom was a little bit one-dimensional. She always looked very worried, and I know she had many concerns in her life. And even when she smiled, it seemed to only come from here down. It never really reached her eyes. So I found it a bit difficult to kind of get on her side. And because she never really showed much of a personality, it made it a bit less convincing why all these men were falling in love with her. It just made them look very shallow. They were only attracted by her pretty face because there was not much else that she was revealing to the rest of the world. But maybe because of that, they could make up, fantasies in their heads about what she was really like. Then we come to James as Neung. So James as Neung was, the normal James cute, but he was really very annoying. He's the kind of guy, if you met in your real life, you would really hate him, right? He's very rich, he's very entitled, he's a real brat. Everything has to go his way. He's so arrogant and he bullies Boom, and he uses his money and his position to humiliate her and force her into situations that make her very uncomfortable and often put her in a rather bad light. I almost stopped watching the show about halfway when Neung forcefully kisses Boom by the car because I found his behavior so unacceptable. Even if you have the face of James Jirayu. So Neung's character is very problematic for me. He can be a real bully, he can humiliate her, but he can be redeemed in the end just because he shows some softness or a little bit of a change of heart without ever having to really apologize for his actions. And in the meantime, the girl who has been intimidated and harassed is supposed to accept that, his love for her overcomes everything, and then she just has to suck it up. And I find this an overused trope in many dramas, and I personally do not enjoy this type of storyline. Even right till the end, we as viewers have seen some of his softer side and some of his good intentions gone wrong. Boom doesn't know all this behind the scenes feelings and thoughts. So basically, he manipulates her feelings by pretending to be injured right till the end to elicit sympathy from her. And that is not okay. Ladies, that is not okay. So I know this may not really have been the review that you thought was coming to you, and some of you may think I'm a real killjoy, a wet blanket. Why do I throw such cold water over a drama? If you like this show, you are absolutely entitled to enjoy it and to love it and to love Neung. It doesn't mean that one of us is right or one of us is wrong. We just have our own opinions. But for me, this was where I drew the line, that I couldn't accept some of the behavior and I don't like this kind of narrative. I only watched it a second time because they reran it on Channel 3 last year during COVID, and I was trying to be a good James Jirayu fan, so I watched it and I tweeted about it, but I cannot say that I liked it anymore, and I most definitely will not be watching it again by choice. So as an actor, James of course has full control over his own career, the kind of roles he chooses, the kind of scripts he decides to pursue. But I as a fan have a right to also assess his work and his scripts according to what I like. It doesn't mean that just because we are fans, we must say only nice things. I think this is where we run the danger of believing our own propaganda that everything James touches must be perfect. If that were true and everything that James did was perfect, then I would say I would get bored really fast. Instead, I hope that James tries out a lot of new things. Some will work better than others, but this will help him to grow. And I really look forward to see what he's going to do, as he reaches 30, as he reaches 40, because I think that he has shown us that he can grow. He has the talent, and I think it's good to push himself to do other things. And along the way, there will be some mistakes and there will be some things that are better and some things that are worse. And that's what life is like. So that's it for today with my unvarnished and frank opinion about Nueng Nai Suang. Remember that this is my own personal opinion and you have every right to disagree with me or agree with me. Till next time, please stay safe and take care everyone. Bye.